What are non-fungible tokens and why are people paying $69 million for digital art? Well, that is the focus of our discussion with Ian Rogers. He is the Chief Experience Officer at Ledger. Ian, welcome to Kitco. It's your first time. Tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do and your background?
Sure. My name is Ian Rogers. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Ledger, which means I look after the consumer side of our business. So we sell hardware wallets to store digital assets such as cryptocurrencies or digital art, as you mentioned. Before that, I spent 20 years in the digital music business. My last two posts there were CEO of Beats Music, and then when we sold Beats to Apple, I looked after the streaming music business at Apple. After the launch of Apple Music, I came here to Paris to be the Chief Digital Officer at LVMH. So that's what I did for the 5 years previous to joining Ledger.
Awesome. And we're going to be talking about all things NFTs, non-fungible tokens. First of all, what is a non-fungible token? And have you ever seen anything similar to this concept in your career before?
You know, it really is a very new thing. I think that, I spent my career in the internet business and, you could say the web 1.0, the web 2.0 business. And this really is about Web 3.0, which is about giving more ownership back to consumers. That I think there have been a lot of great things about the web, but we haven't had really digital ownership with kind of Web 1.0 or 2.0. I mean, I'm at least partially responsible for the fact that you don't own compact discs. You might have a Spotify or an Apple Music subscription, and so in many ways, that kind of lack of ownership is a great thing, or at least a convenient thing. But as human beings, we like to collect things. We like ownership. We like sovereignty, and also, of course, in the financial space, digital store of value, digital transmission of value is extremely valuable, and I would say a real innovation. So I think what we're experiencing now is this is the creation of digital assets. We have now critical digital assets which can be lost or stolen the same way that you could have your cell phone be lost or stolen, and they hold value. So a non-fungible token is something that is unique. So if you could say that an Ethereum or a Bitcoin is fungible, because if you're getting one Bitcoin, you don't really care which Bitcoin you get. You're getting a Bitcoin. But if you're getting a piece of art, you might care if that's number 1 or number 5 in the series, just like you would if it was a piece of fine art or a photograph. So that's what's meant by non-fungible tokens. They are actually unique digital objects.
Mm-hmm. So I think the word fungibility means that it can't be easily traded or replaced by another similar good. What makes the blockchain technology useful as a platform for creating non-fungible assets?
That's a great question. I think that, but that is really what the innovation of the blockchain is all about, is giving us a way to have digital ownership that is trust-free and distributed, right? So, what you have is you have this public ledger of who owns what, and then you as the individual hold your private key, which shows you as the owner of those items on the ledger. So in that way, you have kind of proof of ownership, but without necessarily having kind of a closed single source of that knowledge. The source of that knowledge is open and available to the public.
Okay, so let's talk about some use cases for NFTs then. What have you seen in the media that have struck your attention for where this technology is headed?
Well, I mean, there have been some big ones. I keep telling people, the world that we live in this week is different than the world we lived in last week. Yeah. Because last week we did not yet live in a world where someone had spent almost $70 million on a piece of digital art. But before that, I was saying that, this month is different than the world that we lived in last month, when we didn't yet live in a world where someone spent more than $200,000 on a LeBron James moment from NBA Top Shots. So there have been a number of these. There was a Grimes release. We had our first album release in the space with Kings of Leon a couple of weeks ago. So there are a lot of use cases. There are use cases that are broad ranging. So you've got art, music, sports, and gaming. There are many uses for this technology.
Is this a fad, Ian? Is this something that's going to come and go away, or do you see this being the beginning of a brand new asset class for investors as well?
I don't think it's a fad at all. I think you're probably seeing a bit of a bubble in terms of the pricing, but I think that's simply because as one futurist famously said, the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed yet, and so I think that the value of these assets will get distributed across more artists over time. But I think the market cap on these things will only increase from this point forward, and I think that's because human beings love to collect things. That there's and we collect things. You can see behind me, I collect vinyl. But who sees my vinyl collection? People who come to my apartment. I think that the notion of kind of collecting things and using those collectibles as part of your identity is very uniquely. I just think humans do that. There's nothing that it's impossible to deny that. So I think we'll see that. Also, if you think about it, everything is collectible, and we have digital lives. So, like I said, I spent the last 5 years of my career at LVMH, and I think that the future where you can buy a luxury handbag and then take the digital representation of that good with you into a game or a virtual environment, I don't think that's too far away for us. So I think that there's certainly a bubble in terms of NFT everything at the moment, but I do think that that will be more the norm than not. When if you buy something to immediately get a digital certificate of authenticity, will probably be more the norm than the exception.
So you're an expert on consumer trends, especially in the luxury goods and digital assets spaces. Tell us about the demographics of the type of people who may be interested in NFTs. Who, like going by your example, for example, a Louis Vuitton bag, a digital version of that. Who would buy that? Who would buy a Nyan Cat GIF worth $600,000 of Ether, for example?
Well, I think those are very different markets, but I think the thing that makes it easy to see that this isn't a fad is the fact that there are so many different markets for this. I'm thankful for NBA Top Shots because I think for a lot of people it shows, oh wow, for people to kind of get their heads around, oh, this is like baseball card collecting. I think that they can understand that. Anyone who grew up collecting stamps can understand what's going on here. But if you look at, let's say, let's use Louis Vuitton as an example. 100% of the Louis Vuitton customer base has Instagram, right? So the customer base for you could say either Instagram or WeChat, pick, but they certainly have one of the two. And so the point being is that Louis Vuitton customers have digital lives. So, for them to take a digital representation of that product into their digital life, I think it's going to be, incredibly natural for them. I think there's another thing to consider here, though. Think about, we've all seen the rise of sneaker culture over the past, 5 or so years. And, there are a lot of kids on the planet today for whom sneakers are currency, right? They're social currency and they're actually real currency, whether they're selling them on StockX or Grailed or et cetera. So I think that, if you think about that demographic and what this might mean for them, where they have collectibles, which are, completely liquid, it gets pretty exciting. Think about the excitement that there's been around cryptocurrency over the last few years. And now ask yourself, which is more fun, money or Pokemon? Now imagine that you can pay for things with Pokemon. That's, kind of what we're talking about here. So I don't think it's hard to imagine that there's a pretty, ready market for these assets.
That's fascinating, Ian. Tell us more about this consumer trend. I'm curious to learn more. So are you saying it's more or less the same crowd as the people who already invested in crypto, the people who maybe already be interested in the digital asset spaces?
Well, I think I could answer this question in two ways, because I think if you look at the people who are spending huge amounts of money on these assets now, they probably are people who are already invested in crypto. Look, if you bought that ETH, at an extraordinary low price, and now, your asset has grown considerably to kind of, move that ETH from one liquid asset, which is Ethereum, into another liquid asset, which is an NFT, is not a large jump. But I actually think the more interesting answer to the question is that I think it's exciting that these things are attracting a lot of people to the digital asset space who weren't here yesterday. So I think if you look at the people who are buying, cards on NBA Top Shots, they may not be people who have been in the crypto space for a long time. If you look at the people who ended up purchasing the Kings of Leon digital album, that they may be just music fans who this may have been their first purchase. And there are also, if you look at some of the other places where people are buying, digital shoes with a physical twin or a digital jacket with a physical twin, those people, that might be their very first digital asset purchase. And it will actually become the thing that gets them into cryptocurrencies instead of the other way around.
Okay. All right. So let's suppose, well, we're going to talk about Ledger and how that ties back into crypto. But let's suppose you were still, at Apple or Spotify or any of the streaming services you work for, Louis Vuitton, for example, any of these high-end consumer luxury goods products that you've worked for. How would you integrate this into your product line? Would you have considered this at all?
Yeah, I would, and I would recommend that brands do that today. It's actually relatively straightforward to when a customer is checking out, you ask for their wallet address, and you keep it on file even, and then you send them the digital representation of what they have. Or
sorry, when you say digital representation, what does that mean? What is a digital representation?
It's a good question. It could be, it could really be whatever the brand would like it to be. It could be just a certificate of authenticity. But imagine now that I have, kind of the simplest version of that, which is a certificate of authenticity. And then I also connect that wallet to my favorite video game. And that wallet can see that I am an authentic owner of that good. And now there could be an appropriate representation of that product in the game with me. Mm-hmm. So there's it's really kind of wide open in terms of what you could do with it, because it's quite straightforward. What you have is you have proof of ownership, and that then with that proof of ownership, I could get some kind of a perk. If you look at the Kings of Leon example, that the owner of those is going to get backstage passes basically to the next tour. So there's a lot of different things that you could do with that. But I think there's another interesting consumer trend here which ties into that. If you look at what happened, in 2020, we saw, brands, I'll speak for my brands at LVMH, really move, very, authoritatively into the world of direct to consumer. So we've already been on the direct to consumer journey for a long time, of course. And Louis Vuitton is fundamentally a direct to consumer brand, a brand with no wholesale. But if you are a brand who has wholesale distribution as well as direct to consumer distribution, but you can only get the NFT representation of that product in the direct to consumer channel, that's a great incentive for customers to buy directly from the brand as well. So when you have news from a brand like Adidas last week, where they came out and said, they want to grow from 30% direct to consumer to 50% direct to consumer, in the coming months. Well, if I were them, I would offer, if you buy from Adidas.com, you get an NFT. I think you'll definitely see things, moving this direction, which will be exciting for brands and consumers and push us even further into the direct to consumer reality.
You were an exec for the music industry as well. Do you think NFTs could change the entertainment business and how artists could think about in the future how to market themselves, how to market their songs and products and shows and whatnot?
Absolutely. I think it will completely change the way that an artist can own their own art and deliver that art to their fans, and potentially even collaborate. Imagine that a song is a collection of owned parts anyway, right? So if you open the liner notes to your favorite album, you'll see effectively the credits, which is another way of saying who gets paid, when this particular song gets sold. Okay, well now imagine that you could track those rights if it was remixed, if there were derivative recordings. That's something that's never been pulled off in the music business. That where you get kind of an actual marketplace for collaboration and those sorts of things. And I think that this type of technology ultimately will lead to that as well.
Well, do you see any potential copyright or legal issues with NFTs? Say somebody wants to create an NFT based on an existing piece of art. and then somebody else wants to do the same thing, well, who gets there first? Who claims that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that will be something that you're going to see a lot, in fact, where people are creating things that don't actually belong to them. So I think it's going to be a huge problem. The problem of counterfeit in this space is going to be huge, and we will need ways that customers can validate that this is actually who they said it is. And then you'll just have also kind of the kind of existing underlying rights problems that you have with anything. I can't just take your song and use it in my TV show. And so I can't just take your song and use it in my NFT either. So, though this doesn't solve those type of problems, but it actually could present a solution to them. There are very few people who have figured out some of these difficult rights issues, YouTube being one of them. I can put a piece of music under a video, upload it to YouTube, and YouTube will take care of the payment of that recorded music piece. That's not a solution that exists broadly on the internet. But you could engineer a solution like that if you had kind of an underlying rights management system, and NFTs, could lead us in that direction.
Okay, and finally, let's talk about storage, which I believe is where Ledger comes in. Say I spent $69 million buying an artwork from Beeple. Well, I wouldn't, but say I did. What do I do with this? Like, what do I store it? How do I secure it?
Yeah, well, and let's face it. I mean, even something that is $10 or $100 might be a lot of value to to the purchaser. So this is what we do at Ledger. We have a piece of hardware to store the private keys, so you can own your digital assets. You can effectively hold them in your hand. You can hold that ownership in your hand, but you also have the security. The fact of the matter is that the devices that we all work from today were built for Web 2.0. So your laptop, your web browser, your phone, and the apps that run on your phone, they aren't secure in the way that Ledger is secure. So Ledger has a secure chip, secure memory, secure screen. You can't get in there with malware the same way that you could on your phone or on your computer. You're not susceptible with Ledger to SIM swap attacks and those sorts of things. So I think if you have enough value that matters to you, whether it's $10, $100, $1,000, or $69 million, then you want to store that somewhere safe. You want to store that on a Ledger.
All right, Ian, that was very educational. Thank you so much for giving us your insights. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a super fun topic.
Absolutely. We'll love to speak with you again soon. And thank you for watching Kitco News. I'm David Lin.